Permission to record granted.
Permission to record granted. Hello, everyone. I would like to welcome you all to our Tribe Kickstart 2021 60-minute conversation, 45 minutes, 65 minutes, just depending on how long it takes. We're excited to welcome you here, and we've got a really amazing special guest who we'll just announce in a moment. But we wanted to do this video, this little series, just to help people who are really trying to make some big decisions for the next chapter of their life. We've kind of come through a pretty tough year, and it's not maybe over quite yet, but we want to come together and really make some decisions for ourselves and for our future together. And so we decided to host this little meeting and let people know a few things that they might be able to do to make some really strong decisions and goals coming up. And so I'm Raylene, I'm with Tribe Leadership, and I've got Barbara, my partner, here with me, and I'd like for her to sort of take over and introduce our guest.
Thanks, Raylene. Hi, everyone. Really excited to be here on a sunny, snowy morning. So excited in Ottawa. Winter has officially begun. And yeah, we're looking forward to just sharing a few things with you today around this program, like Raylene announced. And to do that, we thought we'd start off with a story, a real life story. And I wanted to invite a former colleague of mine, friend, colleague, so many things, Ellen Simone, doctor of naturopath. She is somebody who we probably met about 5 years ago, right?
Yeah, through networking. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, through networking, business networking. And Ellen, I ended up working with her as she became my naturopath, but I also ended up working with her as a coach to help her coach her with her business. And so we thought we'd invite her here just to tell a little bit of her story around this sort of path that that's basically what we do with this Kickstart program, and that is to sort of help you in your business life career sort of gain the clarity you need, and then move to some strategies and prioritization, and then get some action items down. It's a process that is really successful. It's really tried and true. And we thought we'd just bring an example to life. So maybe, Ellen, you could sort of start off, that we sort of worked together to get you from point A to point B. Mm-hmm. And what was your point A, and how did that process work for you getting to your B? Maybe you can describe that to us.
Okay, for sure. So yes, hi, I'm Ellen. I'm a naturopathic doctor. So thank you, Raylene and Barbara, for having me here today to share my story. Barbara was very helpful for me at a pivotal time in my business. So I guess a little bit about like where I started when I first met Barbara is I had learned for 5 years through observing a couple busy clinics that I worked in. I was like, okay, this is how this clinic owner runs their business, and this other clinic owner runs their business this way. And I finally felt like I was ready to leave and start on my own and be my own business owner. So I took that step. I opened my own office, set everything up the way I wanted to, and then was kind of like, okay, I'm here at this goal. Where do I go next? So I wasn't really sure what I wanted because I felt I'd reached my goal and everything was sort of open-ended. So I met Barbara through networking, and she became my business coach. So she was super helpful at sitting me down and helping me plan for the future. In terms of what I wanted my business to look like, how I wanted my work-life balance to look like. I didn't have children at the time, but now I have a nice almost 1-year-old little girl at home. So it's like I'd hit a certain point in my business where I thought I wanted to be, and I didn't know where to go next. So we sat down and we looked at like the different components of my business. So like the financial, I remember doing marketing, self-learning, like my own personal goals and growth, as well as maybe what I wanted to, like how much did I want to work on my business and be in my business, and how much did I want it to be on its own. So I guess one of the key things I remember Barbara really helping me with is identifying which of those pieces to work on the most. So once we sort of figured out that I wanted to work on finances and having my business be a little bit more self-sufficient so that I could step away and start a family, or step away and go on holiday as well, we sort of, identified different things there to work on in more detail. So
Yeah.
I think that's a good start, or yeah.
Yeah, I remember. I recall clearly now that the goal when you said like I'd like to be able to have a family. So if I have to take
Mhm.
some time off, I want my business to keep running without me.
Yeah, like I
And
realized
so,
it was all dependent on me, and I needed like other systems, other revenue sources to sort of keep it running, if I were to step away from it temporarily.
yeah, yeah. So how do you? And then we just sort of looked at that from there, right? What
Yeah.
you?
Yeah, I remember looking at, like budget, so sort of how much cash flow do I need, and, do I bring on renters to rent space from me and join my practice? Or was I going to then offer different services? So we sort of narrowed down what the key point was for me, to reach that goal.
Yeah, yeah, and breaking that down into a 1 year plan
Oh,
strategy,
yeah. Hmm.
and then into quarters, and what are the priorities for the quarters, and
Yes,
those things.
it
Yeah,
was very helpful because I felt like every day I would go to work and do what I needed to do that day. But with Barbara, like breaking it down over the year, it gave me sort of the bigger perspective so that I could focus on, what do I need to do today, but also what do I need to do to achieve like my bigger goal for the year. So it was very helpful working with you, and the homework you gave me was very helpful because there was lots of self-reflection, and also I really liked how I could measure how I was doing. So it's like you say, okay, this is the goal, and then this is the key performance indicator, and we would measure those and make sure that I was actually hitting those targets or not. So it was really great for you to hold my hand and keep me on track and accountable for that year.
I have to say you were very very industrious in
Oh,
terms of pursuing that. Like I didn't
mhm.
feel like I had to because sometimes, right, some people are, they're caught up in other things or whatever, and you were leading the way. I was just kind of running after you.
Oh, thanks. But I think I was industrious because you got me like inspired. I was like, okay, yes, like this is what I want to do. So I think you helped motivate me to be motivated, if that makes sense.
Cool. Yeah.
Mhm.
So how does that all played out? You have a kid now, and how has that
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, so I guess some of the key things that I put in place were, so I streamlined some processes. So like a lot of my stuff is online. So clients book online, they order their supplements online. I didn't have to be as dependent on having an admin person to help out and be in the clinic. So that minimized my admin costs. And then I brought on some new practitioners who were very in line with my business vision. Oh, yes, that was another thing. It was just me in the office. And so Barbara really helped me to identify what was my vision and my mission statement for my business so that I could attract for other people to join me in the business so that we could share this vision with others. So just even getting clear on what I wanted to project in my business and how I wanted to market it was all very useful in attracting the people to work with me to help. So currently I have 3 other practitioners who are sharing my space. And one of them, another naturopath, Jacqueline, she did my maternity leave locum. So I was able to put out there what I was looking for and find the perfect person to sort of replace me while I took a few months off to have a baby and start my family. And all my clients were like, oh, yes, Dr. Jackie, she's just as good as you. It's great. And like the whole flow of it was perfect because I knew what I needed in that person. And Barbara, you really helped me figure out which qualities in the person I needed. So even just like interviewing somebody to be part of the practice, like all those skills I learned from you, and they were very helpful. So I guess so where I am now is I have more income from the other practitioners. So a lot of my business costs are covered. So I am able to only work part-time now. So now that my daughter is almost 12 months and we'll figure things out with COVID and daycare, but I was able to step away and have a family and have that work-life balance without feeling overly financially burdened by taking the time away. Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. Just setting yourself up. And who would know that COVID was going to come along, and that would also be very helpful to have all your online stuff set up as well.
Yeah. So I was very lucky that way. And that was already my original plan, was to do a couple virtual shifts and a couple in-office shifts. So COVID kind of, projected that, or helped my patients adjust to that, because we all had to be virtual. So it kind of was all part of the plan, or supported my business vision plan. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's very cool. For me, if I might add, for me, what was so rewarding was, first of all, working with you, because you're such a motivated person, and you were really you were just so in there.
Mm-hmm.
But also that now, I don't know how many years later, because I don't know when we started, but you're living a vision, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you're living a vision. You have a kid, and you're able to take time with your child and not have to sacrifice your business, or set up so you can come back to your business when you need and when you want. And I just think that's awesome. That's rewarding to see the vision.
Yeah. Well, that, I guess, was one of my big fears of being a woman entrepreneur with no maternity leave, and it was just sort of, how am I going to do it? But you really, set me up and gave me clarity, and I did all the steps that you suggested, and you supported me along the way to sort of make my vision come to fruition. So thank you so much for all your help. But yeah, I feel like this is where I need to be, and when I'm ready for the next step, I will definitely call you again to figure out what that is. Mm-hmm.
So awesome. Yeah. And your little one's napping, so you can't show her off, but there you go.
She's napping right now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Well, thanks for sharing your story, Ellen.
Yeah, you're welcome.
That's awesome.
I just want to interject, because it is so cool to hear how process matters, right? Like, it's so nice to have a good idea, but it's so hard sometimes to pull it through, and you sometimes having that objective perspective, or that person who's just like, okay, we've got a plan, let's just work it. I love that. And the whole COVID thing, we didn't know that everybody would have to go virtual so fast. But even in my own business, I used to own a restaurant and a cheesecake company, and we already owned a visual effects company, so that was fine. It was already online. But I think about 5-6 years ago now, I made a huge decision to figure out how my business could be online. And I knew that my restaurant and cheesecake business could not do that the way I wanted it to. But it's so cool to just see how people are looking at diversifying what they do, so that it can be weatherproof regardless of what's happening around or in the world. That's great. And I'm hearing a real life example.
For sure. Yeah. Well, I definitely knew what I wanted, but then I had no idea how to get there. And I think if I didn't work with you, Barbara, I'd still be wondering how to get there. So,
that action taking piece.
Yeah.
How to get from point A to point B. Yeah. And so it's great to hear your story from that perspective, because it speaks to that process. Because like you say, a lot of people they sort of have a vision. Sometimes it's actually not that clear, but yours was actually pretty clear. Sometimes it takes a while to make that clear as well, but then how do you get there? Yeah, that's a challenge. So and thanks for sharing that piece.
Yeah, for
I know
sure.
you have to
Thank
run
you for
too,
having me.
shortly, so.
Okay, yes. Do you have any more questions? Otherwise, I'm going to, I guess, log off.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Ellen, for sharing your story. And I know you had just a little bit of time today, so we don't want to keep you, but the rest of you, you're with us. We've got a few more things to share before we go, but Ellen, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Well, thank you for having me. I'm happy to share my story. Yeah, Barbara and Raylene are excellent. Highly recommended. So enjoy the rest of
Ellen,
the web.
as a naturopath, I might
thank you.
plug her ability. She's incredible. So
thank you so much.
Hey, Barbara, let's make sure we put some of her info in the group so people can find her if that's what they're looking for.
Okay.
Yeah, that'll be connected to this interview.
Okay.
Cool.
Awesome. Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Ellen.
Okay, so have a great day. Enjoy the rest of the webinar. Okay, bye.
Good holidays to you. Bye.
Awesome. Well, it is so great to hear a story. I mean, for a lot of the people here and watching this later, they may have heard some of our story, Barbara, but I think that's it's such a key piece to know if we're actually want to make decisions, there's action involved, right? It's not just a good idea. It's not just a wish or a hope. And I lovingly always say in my own mind and in some of the language we use is that being in action is a choice, but inaction is also a choice, right? So for so many people, they kind of maybe have an idea of what they might want if they could find the courage or knew the steps or had some idea of whether or not they could follow through, but it's that objective perspective. And we did promise that we would give a few sort of tips and tricks or things people can do if they're really trying to take the next steps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It speaks to the process, and as much as what Ellen just shared was a business story, right? So hers was, how do I get, I know what my point B is. She knew that. Sometimes we don't, but how do we get then from where you are to that piece? And sometimes it's not even clear where we are right now. So I think it's probably good to start off with the idea that the clarity piece that we start off with, when we work with people, either in their business or personal lives, the clarity piece is it's not just about where you want to be in the future, but it's about where are you now and what is it that is holding you back. It's sort of like taking a stock of the landscape right now.
Yeah.
What do you have available to you? What's going for you? What are the things that are maybe pushing up against you to make that happen, and to identifying those pieces, because those are often very unclear. Like what's going to get in my way, and how do I work through that?
Yeah.
Because it could start everywhere from your own limiting beliefs. And I've worked with a lot of clients where the first piece was we have to work on, because the first blockages and first lack of clarity was sort of up here, right?
Yeah, we're our own worst enemy. I mean, ask anybody who's tried to move something forward, what was the biggest thing that got in their way? It's usually around how I feel about it, right? Or the beliefs that I have.
How do you get out of your own way? So that's not always necessary, but usually there's bits in there that we need to use. For sure. Like I was working recently with a client who's wanting to just make a whole life shift career wise. Like it's like, I'm tired with a 9-to-5 and I want to build my own, like my 9-to-5 was like really, it was kind of, how should I say, like a lot of piddly kind of analytic work. And she just wanted to get out of that and be creative, right? She just wanted to embrace that creative side. So what does that look like? And how do we do that? And it was it was interesting because it was only working together in a program similar to this that we found out why she was having a hard time pulling over, right? Why she was sort of clinging to the stability of what she knew. And then once we kind of clarified that, it was like, whew, okay, now I'm free to have a clear vision and to really, really get down and look at the detail of where I want to be.
Yeah. One of the things I've heard a lot, and I've actually said it myself at times, is I feel too old to be young and too young to be old. And it's hard at certain ages, and that's probably a range, but I can only use myself as an example in this and some clients. But you kind of get to the point where if you want to make a big decision to maybe go from a career job to entrepreneurship, or you want to shift something in a significant relationship, or for me, I went and got a master's degree at 47, but I had never gone to university. So that was a big decision that had a lot to do with if I felt capable, if I felt worthy, if I felt like I could be successful at it. I think there's a lot of people who are looking at those big life decisions and thinking, what is everyone else going to think? Like, do they think I'm blowing up my life if I decide to become an entrepreneur? And oddly enough, a lot of people think that because I am an entrepreneur, that I'm a full advocate for it, right? That I think you should just like quit everything and become an entrepreneur. And I so don't believe that. I think everything is about a logical process. Everything is about going into things for the right reasons and not just because it looks shiny. And there's a lot of realities that people need to understand about being an entrepreneur, right? Like, it's not an easy thing.
And that takes process. That takes the clarity, exactly, which is that first piece of this program that we're speaking to you about. It speaks to I mean, it's really in a coaching process. That's how you start as well, right? Whether you're coaching individuals or businesses, it's clarity. But then, of course, you got to get to the action, and that's what Ellen spoke to. She was very clear. But it's like, how in the heck do I get to this vision where I can live the life I want to live with a family and all that, and my own business? Right? How do we break that down?
Yeah. Well, and so if the first step is process, like really understanding what you want, why you want it, what's the motivation, what's the timeline, like those sort of details. The next step in sort of an take action scenario is priority mapping. Right? And we talk a lot about this. We do this whether it's with an individual client, just a person, or if it's with an entire organization. Priority mapping is always the step that has to come right after vision and clarity, right? Because you cannot get anywhere if you don't create the roadmap. And so the step of really understanding the sequence of events, and Barbara, you've done a lot of this with clients as well, really helping map out where they want to go and how they're going to get there.
And the key to the success there, I feel, is working together. So our approach is, and my approach has always been to co-create those priorities. So we look at the strategy together. You know your business, you know your life, with some help, maybe some soundboarding and some questions and stuff that need to be asked, but you know that better than anyone. So let's look at that whole, let's create that strategy together. Because I've worked a long time in industry where, you'll hire somebody and they'll come in and they'll sort of say, okay, here's your strategy, right? They'll sort of plunk it down on your desk, 100 pages or whatever it is. And they don't, and that's changing a lot now. So that's great. But what Kickstart, what Tribe is about, what I'm about, what you're about, is about making, because when it becomes yours, then it's kind of foolproof, right? Like if it's you who's put in the pieces with some guidance, not that things can't change or you can't pivot if you need to, but that's become your creation, right?
We can't give you a template for your life and business.
No, but we can help you with the process.
Yeah. If somebody's telling you, I can give you this roadmap to help you move forward, it's kind of BS, because it all comes down to what you need. And as coaches, it's not our job to decide that for you. It's our job to help you understand the strengths that you really have and the assets that you have, which, by the way, most of us dismiss our best assets. And a lot of our experience, we think it's not valuable for the thing we need to do. And I'll give you a little example of, I'll give you an example for me coming into my career, a parent for many years, dismissing that, feeling like that wasn't valuable, being a parent of 5 kids and working a family like that I dismissed that. I dismissed the fact that at 22 years old, my husband and I started a visual effects business when there was no visual effects happening in Saskatchewan, right? And Trevor had to teach himself how to do it because we had 5 kids. He couldn't afford, well, at 22, we didn't have 5 kids, but we had family and we couldn't just go off to university for that stuff. And so I dismissed my part in that. I helped him get clients for 20 years. I helped create those relationships. I helped move that business forward. But I looked at it as just, that's my role as a partner, as a wife partner, not as a business partner. So dismissed all that as not valuable. So I get to, 47 years old and I'm thinking, should I go and get a master's degree? Should I be moving my knowledge forward in this area? But I didn't feel like I had anything valuable, at certain ages. And often it takes that outside person to say, no, let's take stock and let's look at how that can be framed and how it's so useful for the thing you want to do in the future. And all of a sudden you realize I have a full toolkit that I never knew and I never accessed. And
Yeah.
that can be so powerful. For me, it was so powerful.
Yeah, I was working with a client once who had so she had a physical disability, so she was in a wheelchair and a bit of a speech thing, but super educated, like way more educated than I am. Like had like I don't know how many degrees, and had done some amazing work, super intelligent. And it was sort of that sitting down with her as well and saying, you know, what's your vision, and but helping her understand, like speaking a bit to what you said, helping her understand what do you already have that you've done in your life that you can put a name to, right? You can actually, if you get it down on paper and we'll work through that process, what are the things you bring to your vision already that you can draw on? And for so many people, it's not clear, right? You know, like somebody will say, well, can you help me? You know, I want to apply for a job or something. And so can you help me with my resume? But for me, that's not about that's not about a CV. That's about, let's sit down and really look at the amazing accomplishments you have that can feed into the vision you have, right? And this is not just about a job interview. This is about all those pieces that are the skills and the things you bring, the vision or passion or whatever. And this is about a bigger picture, a point B that's further down the road. So whether it's in a career shift or whether it's in a life shift, you know, switching up what you want to do in your life, there's so much clarity to be brought. And then now how do we package that, right? How do I package that and present it to people that I need to pull in, like Ellen was talking about, being clear of those things. Now she could go and speak to people about her vision, and to her people close around her and people that she wanted to bring on board, associates and colleagues. And it was so much easier for her to explain to them, now this is what I want. And then they could say, oh yeah, I'm in, right? Like I want to be part of this. And you know, I see what you're doing here and I see what you're doing there and what you're bringing there. And so it's sort of starts to draw things in. So in that interim process, the clarity leading into that sort of priority mapping and strategic mapping, now you can start to, you know, put your pieces in your
Well,
board
it gives
pieces.
you an anchor point, right? It gives you that anchor point for your own confidence to be like, no, I actually did all this and it actually is relevant. So now I feel like I can go forward. And it's the art of explanabragging, right? And somebody recently said
To
that
yourself.
Right, yeah, to yourself. Raylene, you got to get better at explanabragging, because I dismiss the things I do, right? Or downplay them rather than highlighting them for what they actually are, even if it's just for me. Even if it's just so I have the confidence to go into that next meeting or that next step or apply for that next contract, whatever it is. It's so
and then take it
important.
to the next level once you've
Exactly.
gotten to that.
Yeah.
Good comment. So the idea that as women, often we kind of underplay that. I think, you know, it could be that for men, we're sort of taught more to kind of value those things, but then to see how does that plug in now to the next thing that we're doing, right? Like, so how do I take that and make it actionable and make it real, going forward?
Yeah.
And strategically, right? To be strategic about that. And the enjoyable part for me, I love also when it gets down to that nitty gritty of like, well, so how, you know, so, okay, let's plug this in and let's map this. What would be the biggest thing? I love to work with 20-80 lots. So what's the 20%, you know, when we priority map, it's like, what's the 20% of what I could do right now? Because I can't do everything all at once, that I could do right now that's going to have the biggest impact toward my goal, right? So let's prioritize that for this quarter or for this, you know, next period in your life. And let's break that down. And what does that mean? What does it mean you have to do every week? Like, what does it mean? You know, she talked about coming in to work every day, knowing, like having some kind of clarity around, oh, like I got up this week or this Monday or this day. And because, you know, I had the big picture, but we had also taken that priority mapping and broken it down into some really tangible actions, that because ultimately as humans on a daily basis, we act, you know, it's about doing stuff. And that's what we kind of cling to often, right? Because if we don't have stuff to do, then we float. So, and have that anchored back, all the way back to that clarity and vision, but into the strategy, and being able to really say, I chose to do this today. Like I created a plan to do this today, to do this week, because, and I base that on a priority that I set. You know, there's just so much, it's all kind of flows and fits so well, so that it does give that confidence to and motivation
Yeah.
to work it through, even if you have to make changes, right? Or things happen, you know, from the outside or whatever. But
well, and there's a whole emotional piece of it too, and you know, where our limiting beliefs, or we have, like, you could walk into your office today and not get anything done because you're struggling, because you're in a negative mind space, or you're in a old habit, like I always call it the broken record, right? We all have a broken record of some kind that limits us at different times, and we could be always working on creating new habits so that that's not as powerful, right? But we have those things. And I always think of it, you know, I made my priority map for Tribe, right? I've made very clearly what I need to do. And there's always shifts because that's life and business. But I know that I made those decisions from a logical perspective for what I want to do in my business, right? And so my job when I get to my office door, if I have any limiting beliefs or I'm letting that broken record spiral, it's very visceral for me. I actually leave it outside the door because I got work to do. And the work is around the logical priorities that I made. They are not based in the emotional ups and downs that I might have throughout the day. If I need to have a pity party later, I feel sorry for myself, or I'm whatever, that happens at lunchtime, or it happens after the workday. And I look at it very clearly that way, because if I didn't, I'd be limiting myself all day in different moments, right? Anything can set you off and you have a bad day, but I have a job to do. And even though it's like, it'd be so easy as an entrepreneur to give myself a break. Oh, well, I just need a Netflix day because I'm feeling sorry for myself, right? Well, nobody else is going to do the work for me, right? If you've got things to do and you're trying to move your goal and your dream forward, and that can apply to anything in your job, at home, with your relationships. If you have a goal, nobody's going to reach it except for you. So what are you going to do to make a commitment to yourself? And priority mapping is key to making those logical decisions based on truth, based on the truth that you've gone through with your clarity process, right? Going through those exercises. Now you have a map that's based on truth. And if I execute these steps, I will get from A to B. There is no other option. If I choose not to, if I choose to be inaction or in action, like, those are decisions we can make. So this time next year, have you gone through those steps and you're now where you want to be, or did you choose not to because you're allowing the old stories to continue coming up? Right?
And they will, like, I mean, you make a good point. Like, as much as in the clarity in the beginning of, you know, are there things holding you back, beliefs, all those things, they're going to still come to haunt you, right? Because we're human and stuff, cross currents come and hit you all the time. But the beauty of having the clarity of a priority map and setting actions to that, and having a real sort of plan going forward, is that like you're describing, Raylene, you can come back to that, right? Like, you can always come back to that, and it's much easier to leave those days where you're just like, man, I'm just going to let this take over, right? Like, I'm just going to let this storm blow through and mess up my day or whatever, versus, oh, I have a pretty clear list of things, or a pretty clear focus today of what I want to do. And so as much as I'm feeling crappy, I can stick to it, right? Because it came from somewhere strong. And
yeah. When I was in my highest strength, whatever that looks like for you, I made these decisions, right? And it leads us sort of into our third, if our first step that we want to give you guys is clarity, right? A process, creating that, really getting clear about that. And so many people talk about clarity. It's such a hard, it's like this nebulous thing, but for you, what is the goal, and what are some of the pros and cons of that? Really making those decisions around the truth of your experiences and whatever. And then coming through the priority mapping, really laying it out. What does that look like? What are the, as Barbara said, the 2080 thing? What are the things I can really focus on now? Some of them I might need to put a pin in. My granny, you guys have all heard this if you've talked to me for 5 minutes. My granny's best advice to me was, Raylene, you can do all the things you want to do in life. You just may not do them all at one time. And that was like freeing for me to hear that, because I put this pressure on myself to do everything right now as fast as possible so I could feel like I was, but there's a process.
And that is not a process.
No, but and to build that process so that they're laid out in a logical, doable way. We want to be successful. We want you to be successful, which means you can't eat the whole elephant at one time. You have to take off one bite at a time, which is a kind of a gross analogy, actually. We should think of a different one.
For the vegetarians out there.
Like, well, I don't even want to
cannot eat the baobab tree all at once.
But anyways, that leads us to our third sort of tip that we want to leave you guys with today, which is around creating the plan. Like actually creating the plan. It's great to brainstorm. It's great to think about. It's great to sort of mind map out a few, but you got to write it down. You got to have an actual action plan. And Barbara,
it's got to be on paper.
Yeah, speak to that, because you're like the queen of priority planning and really making sure that there's logical steps. So how important even psychologically is actually creating the success plan?
Well, the idea of getting on paper, some people like to work on their head. You know, there's some people who are like to-do list maniacs, right? And they think because they're getting it down on paper and they have a checklist that's like they've got it, right? Like this is all under control because I've got my to-do list. But if you do your to-do list randomly, or if it's not based on all that other pre-work, then that's not useful. And then there's other people who just kind of, it's in my head and we'll go with the flow. But so if you've done all the pre-work and you make your action plans and the bits, and Ellen was speaking to like KPIs, key performance indicator, like how can I measure, how do I know I'm getting to my goal? Like if I wanted to reach more people online through my online part of my business, right? I want that to build that part of my business as part of my vision. How do I know that? Well, what are the things you have to measure for that, right? Getting down to that detail so that you can take stock in, 6 months or in 3 months. You can take stock and say, okay, am I successful in this? And if you're not, then at least you can revisit that and say, well, let's try something else, try a different strategy. But if you don't actually even have a handle on how you're going to measure those sort of benchmarks or those signposts that you're trying to get to, then that's not helpful either. But getting it down on paper, there's a brain science to that. It's out there, it's visible. If you have other people who are involved, they can see it as well. The worst thing about not just being in a business, but even in your own life, is stuff is in your head. I mean, this is in our partnerships, life partnerships too, right? You've got all these plans and all these visions and things going on in your head and what you've decided to do. And then but you haven't shared it or communicated it with anybody, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty common issue, I think. I don't know what's going on in your head. Your business has no value if it's all in your head, period. Mm-hmm. Like it doesn't, like it has to be on paper.
It's an idea. If that point, it's just an idea.
Because if you break your leg and you're laid up for the next whatever, it's entirely dependent on what's in your head, and you're suddenly not there, right? So you setting yourself up for challenges going forward if you don't get it on paper. And it just makes it easy, stupid simple, right? It's on paper. You've got, and it doesn't have to be complex. It doesn't have to be thousands of sheets of this or that. I mean, when I work with entrepreneurs, for example, we have a few basic sheets we work off, like just a visual of, each quarter for the upcoming year and what are your main priorities there. And then we have, another document that just, or if it's in your life, just, in a journal form, whatever it is, right? Like just something simple. But having it there is, helps you to be accountable.
Yeah.
Right. It helps you to come back and say, okay, I wrote this down. Because it's so easy. And this comes back to the floating in your head thing. If it's just up there, it's like, nah, it was just a thought. It wasn't that important. It wasn't that real. So I can kind of just let that slide. I can have my crap day and let that slide and see what happens tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
So you're helping with accountability for sure.
Well, and there's a lot, and I'm just noticing the time, so we are going to land the plane here and let people go about their day. But there's a lot of you see this in social media a lot, and just like people being kind of negative about productivity, right? Like there, you see a lot of that. Well, you know, don't be overly productive. Don't be, and that's true to an extent. If you're being overly productive because you're avoiding or because you feel like you can't be successful unless you're busy all the time, and that stupid word of busy, like busy is just an indulgence that gets in the way of actual activity or actual productivity. But the truth is that if you're trying to move a goal forward, you have no choice but to be strategically productive. That doesn't mean overwhelmed. That doesn't mean, you know, busy for the sake of being busy. But nobody's going to get there for you. Nobody's going to move your dream forward for you. And it's not your spouse's responsibility. It's not even your business partner's responsibility to move your goals forward. It's yours. Nobody else can do that. And so I think I just wanted to, like, I don't know, reiterate that it's only a good idea in your head until you really map it out and you really think through it. So for people who are struggling with, what are other people going to think? Well, who cares what they think if you don't even know what you think, right? So until you really go through the clarity process and do those 3 steps, and a lot of people can just do them on their own, right? They can take those 3 steps, get really clear, go through the process and map it out, and then put it down. Like, get that structure down and make some accountability practices for yourself. And this is where I think of, I'm too young to be old and too old to be young. How much, like, do I want to still be thinking about this in a year, this thing I want to do, or do I want to actually get to work and get it done? And we kind of have this beautiful, you know, silver lining to a different way of living with COVID, right? A different way. Maybe we can manage our time differently. Maybe we have the opportunity to look at a few things in a new light. But I think Barbara and I both want to challenge people to just take that opportunity to really think about, what's that thing that's been sitting in the back of my heart or mind for a long time that I never gave enough thought to, or I dismissed it because I thought it wasn't going to be something I could do, or I don't know what my friends and family will think. I'm not even sure if I have the confidence to do it. Just take a breath and really think about, what would it feel like? What would it be like to reach that goal? Like, what would that be? What would that look like? And then just start putting some thought and clarity around it. And Barbara and I both want to, you know, we're here for a reason. We want to offer help. Both Barbara and I are going to be taking people through this process individually as one-on-one people if they want that. So we do have a whole process laid out, some personality assessments, whether it's a personal issue that you want to move forward or a business issue. We have some real assessments. And Barbara, maybe you can speak just a little to some of those pieces that can really help bring clarity to the next steps in people's life.
Yeah. So, I mean, in this kind of work and in this kind of facilitation and guidance that we bring to, you know, someone who wants to get to a goal, we have a toolkit full of things that once we've sat down and listened to what's going on for you, what would make most sense for you to apply. So, you know, I was working, or I still am actually working with an executive client who wanted to work on something, and it seemed clear that it should be this assessment, or that was in their mind before we sat down. And then as we got to talking, I was like, oh, I think this kind of assessment, like a more of a behavioral assessment, might be more helpful, because there's a lot of stuff going on at that level between you and your work colleagues. Let's use a behavioral assessment for your management style, and let's look at that. But we have other stuff in our, you know, there's business assessments that can really just completely shine the floodlight on the different areas of your business and what those are and what's needed. There are leadership assessments and life sort of
like the primary needs. What are the things, like the 84 question assessment of what do you actually prioritize in your life? Because we often don't know.
Yeah. So getting just to who you are, who your business is, or what your business is, where it is at, where your leadership or your management is at, whatever it is, whatever is the piece that you're trying to focus on. We have this great toolkit for that and assessment.
Well, and it's critical. Those assessments are critical to really highlighting your strengths. right? Because if you can't highlight your strengths, you don't know how to have that confident piece to move forward. You're kind of floating, right?
Yeah.
And so
It's the clarity piece. They're what we sort of,
yeah, it's
introduce
all
to help you
included.
with the clarity. And that becomes a bit of a springboard then to help move forward and to look at the priority pieces that you need to map
Yeah.
out. So
Yeah.
that's one thing that,
Yeah, so our Kickstart program, and that is what we're offering, and I'm going to share a link with everybody here, and I'll post it later too, but our Kickstart program is that process. It's one-on-one with us. It gives you that clarity piece, and we work with you to know which assessment is going to be most appropriate for where you're at. We help you map that out, the 12-month overview, the 90-day action plan, and then we hold you accountable. Straight up, that's our superpower, is helping people move forward. And I mean, we can do the thing where we list all the clients we've worked with and all the ways we've helped, but I would just ask you to look at what we've done with Tribe. Just straight up, that was a brainstorm 2.5 years ago, and look how far we've brought it just by being super clear. And we've had moments where we've had to pivot, because that's what business is, right? It's never static. It's always fluid. But we want to invite you guys to check out our link. I'm going to pop it in here. I can do that now. But at the end of the day, don't wait. Whether you get our help or not, don't wait to take action in the things that you really want to do. Don't wait, because in 10 years, you're going to look back and say, why didn't I do that? In 1 year, you might look back, right? Yeah. And you're too old to be young and too young to be old, right? Unless you're 25 and you've got the rest of the world ahead of you to make all kinds of decisions. What do you want to get done that you haven't really committed to yet? That's the only question you have to ask yourself.
Yeah, and I've never worked with anyone who hasn't benefited from that. Like you can't not, even if you don't get all the way to your goal, be for whatever reason in that, because that does happen sometimes. There's things that can happen, but the crazy learning and the crazy growth, yeah, and the it's just incredible to see that.
It's next level stuff.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. And just to be really clear, this program, Barbara and I have offered this for years, and it's a $14.95 program, and it's a 4-hour one-on-one coaching that can be broken up, and the assessments happen in between, and there's some ongoing like accountability and learning. But we are giving a holiday discount because we want people to like screw 2020, because there's lots of great learnings, and we'll talk about that probably with our therapists over the next 10 years. But we want to move into 2021 with a plan that can help people move forward. So if anybody needs our help, check out that link, and we have a pretty big discount just for the rest of the year until December. Or if it's something that you know someone else needs. But don't hesitate, whether or not you need help, to just start making those checklists yourself. Start looking at that yourself and move to the next level. And that's what we really wanted to share with you guys today, is that it's not rocket science to move forward a goal, but it is important to actually take action. You can't wish for it and hope that it happens. And there's never going to be a good time.
No, and 2021 has to be different. Like it's 2020 has been that sort of madness and chaos out of which the phoenix must rise. Let your phoenix rise,
and so true. And honestly, Barbara and I have been so busy lately working with corporate clients, but we knew that there's so many people right now that just need some one-on-one time. They need to move something forward. And if we can be a part of that, we're very grateful and honored to do that. And we can,
be the silver lining.
Yeah. So that's really all we got for you guys. Thank you for joining us. We're going to replay this. There's a lot of people that want to see it but weren't able to make it. So
I'm going to post it and keep you posted.
Thank you guys. Have a great day.
Take care all.